Hello and welcome to the Madecast, the official podcast of the Museum of Art and Digital Entertainment, a series of lectures on video game history as part of the Made's ongoing effort to preserve history through teaching and displaying playable exhibits of rare games and consoles.
While life in the time of COVID has forced us to close our doors, the support of people like you has allowed us to continue to bring history to you through lectures and interviews like the one you'll hear in a few minutes. I'm Red.
I'm Chin.
I'm Miles.
And I'm Anthony. Today, Alex sits down with Andre LaMothe, tech guru, author, hardware and software engineer, and lead engineer on the upcoming Intellivision Amico console. They talk about his long career in the industry and what he's up to now. But first, let's get into some news.
Yes, we'll get into some news, but I gotta say the Intellivision Amico is something that it's been brought up, and it's like a very interesting rehashing of the Intellivision. The Intellivision was like that, was that game console that had the number pad and the dial up top, essentially looking like a phone.
Or a TV remote. That's what I thought of it as, yeah.
But with a phone cable like attached to it. It's a very interesting thing, and I'm really stoked to see it be brought back and reimagined. So that'll be something to look forward to. But yes, something about an Alan Wake remaster has just come in through my headpiece. This is breaking news, y'all. Alan Wake remaster coming to PlayStation in 4K, I hear.
Who knows? But Alan Wake is one of those weird games that I like, but never really got a chance to fully appreciate. It was, for a long time, a Xbox exclusive. And it came out on Xbox 360, so it's a fairly old game. It's made by Remedy. It's made by Remedy, the people who recently came out with Control. So it's that same kind of weird, sort of Twin Peaksy horror of, things are a little off, but it's the real world. And I don't know how much you know about Alan Wake.
I know nothing about Alan Wake.
It's the story of a author who goes on a vacation in like the Washington wilderness, like to some coastal Washington town. And he finds out that the ghost stories that he's writing are coming to life. And so he has to go out and sort of banish the dark spirits that he's conjuring by accident. It's good fun.
Yeah, no, it sounds... I avoid horror generally when it comes to like movies and games. The jump scares kind of not really get me. What do you guys think about Alan Wake? Have any experience with it?
Not pretty much, but I've heard it many times. I think one of my friends is a big fan of it, but I just always say, no, I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to touch it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we also have Sonic Colors Ultimate is being released as of this recording today. And Sonic, with that, there is a Sonic Minecraft DLC being released. It's basically just Minecraft Sonic. It's Pixel Sonic.
Yeah.
But it looks like it runs fairly well. If you want to play a cubular Sonic game, pick up this DLC.
Judging by their trailer, I think they're doing a pretty good job. I almost can't tell whether it is in the Sonic game or if it is in the Minecraft game. But you can do everything in Minecraft with modding. So.
I think there's something going on. There's something fishy. But in unfortunate last news, we have Michael K. Williams was found dead. He is a fan favorite operator in Battlefield 4 in character, and he also came back as a special operations character in the new installment of 2042, as well as his other work. He unfortunately is no longer with us. Rest in peace, Michael K. Williams. But now for some better talk, here is Andre LaMothe with Alex.
And we're back with Andre LaMothe. Welcome, Andre.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. So I wanted to start out with your personal history and how it is you came to get involved in computers and programming and embedded systems and so forth.
Okay, well, let's see. That's a long story. I would have to say probably back sometime in the late 70s, two things happened. One, I started, playing Dungeons and Dragons a lot. All right. And as I was playing, I started to become fascinated with, computers. There wasn't much out at the time. So the Atari 2600 game console was out. And of course, the Magnavox Odyssey, Pong was out. And so these systems were kind of out, but there was no real computer that you could kind of play with. However, at a local Radio Shack, they had a TRS-80. So when I found this computer, I would ride my bike every day, many miles actually, because it was quite far from our house. And I would go there, sit down, and code on this TRS-80 and learn BASIC. So I don't know, I was about 10 years old at the time. And then over time, now what was unfortunate about it was there was no way to save your program. So they didn't even have the tape drive. So I typed in these long programs and have to memorize them almost, and then just lose them. But that the iterating was good. So I kept doing that, and then my goal was to kind of, how could I make the Dungeons and Dragons games that we were playing as children on the computer. So that was kind of my goal. So I was just desperate to do that. That was my passion. So that's how I started programming, was on a TRS-80, kind of trying to make Dungeons and Dragons games. And so, during that time, I wrote all kinds of things. I wrote, Pong games, breakout games, lunar lander games, scrolling games, and then, of course, D&D type games. And then I taught myself, Z80 assembly language. So by the time I got into high school, the Atari 800 came out. And when I saw this, now, of course, the Apple came out, in about, 1977, saw the Apple II, but I wasn't too impressed with the graphics, right? When I saw the Atari 800, I was just floored. I could not believe it. Of course, the Atari 800 has custom VLSI chips, just an amazing piece of hardware, a decade ahead of its time, at least at the time. So I talked my parents into buying me one. And of course, at this time, this was a very expensive computer. Even now, it's an expensive computer. So I believe my dad paid, it was like $1,250 for the Atari 800. It was $600 for the disk drive. The monitor was like $600. It was a huge investment. So, but my parents would always support me, whether it was model rockets or electronics or whatever. So they got the computer, and and my dad was worried that I would just play games on it, but I didn't. I just dove into it and started coding all the time, learning BASIC, and then of course 6502 assembly language. And that's kind of where I learned, programming and computer graphics. And the thing about the 800 was that it was so ahead of its time. You had to learn things like display lists and interrupts and kernel drivers and player missile or sprite graphics, bitmap graphics, character graphics, various optimization techniques. So it put me ahead by many years, comparing to other people that were just programming on simpler machines like the Apple II or the TRS-80. So I started making games on the 800 and publishing them in high school. So I would make these shareware games. At the time, there wasn't really the concept of shareware. There was a couple companies that did this, where you could kind of make a game and send it to them, and they would mass produce the discs. So I started doing that and made all kinds of arcade games or clones at the time. And then, as time progressed, went to college, of course, and studied computer science, did a, computer science, mathematics, and electrical engineering triple majored all at the same time. And during that time, I did game development, graphics programming for people, engine programming, Windows and GUI development. So kind of my niche was companies would hire me to do high-performance graphic systems for them, 2D or 3D graphics. I worked for a software publishing corporation. I did all of their high-speed 2D and 3D rendering engines and bitmap renders and rotators and scalers and all that kind of stuff. I wrote windowing systems for database companies so they could have their own custom GUIs that could work in text modes or bitmap modes. So I did all kinds of that kind of programming. So I really kind of focused on graphics, optimization, AI, physics, that kind of thing. So that's kind of, how I got into, game development. And then, coming towards the 90s when I graduated. At that point, I continued writing games. And then I started also writing books at the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, most of our listeners, if they remember you, they probably remember your books. How many have you written at this point? It's a huge number.
Well, as far as how many I've written, I've probably myself written about 25 books, but I have co-authored or co-published probably 150 books with my two series. So the one series, the game development series, that the first one was with Wake Group Press, the Black Art series. And then under
the black art of video game or 3D programming, and
right, there's a black art of 3D game programming, the black art of Java game programming, the black art of Visual Basic game programming. There's a number of them that were part of that series. And then Primatech, which went under a number of different names, kind of came to me in about, I don't know, 1999, 2000, and they wanted to do a game development series. So basically, I had a list of all these ideas of books that I would want to write if I had time, right? So of course I didn't. So anyway, I would find authors for the books, and then I would kind of develop the books and tech edit the books, and then publish the books through them. And so, through them, we published well over 100 books on everything in game development. So that's kind of, where all the books came from at the time.
Is there one book in there that you're particularly proud of above all others?
Well, there's a couple. I mean, I would say that the book that there's two books that I just love. The first one is the Black Art of 3D Game Programming, and that was published through Wake Group Press. And Mitch Waite basically allowed me absolute free reign to just go nuts and write exactly what I wanted with very little copy editing and very little control. So he got me, and so that book is very special to me. And then the latter one, in 2001, Tricks of the 3D Game Programming Gurus. That's kind of my opus. That book has more about software rasterization and rendering and optimization than anything ever published since. So that book is really, I just wanted to get it all out of my system once and for all. So those two books I would say I'm most proud of.
And now you seem to be a serial console designer as well as a serial book author.
Yeah. So, so I had Extreme Games, which I founded in 1995, and we published hundreds of games under Extreme Games, and then I started with first-person shooters and all that. But of course, in the early 2000s, a lot of the game market crashed again, kind of. And what I was waiting for, I kind of got tired of making software games, right? And I wanted something more challenging. I wanted to build the whole thing. So I got the idea in my head. I wanted to start building game consoles and educational game consoles to teach people, how would you build the hardware and the software and the firmware and just make the whole thing yourself, like your own little PlayStation or NES or Atari or whatever. So I started developing the X Game stations in about 2002 or 3, and then we launched the first one, I think, in about 2004. And and sold these to customers that wanted to learn game development. So and made a number of them: the X Game Station Micro and Pico and Avar and PIC and the Chameleons. Then I did the Hydra for Parallax, the multi-core Hydra. And then during that time, of course, I also developed gaming hardware for companies, as projects for outside companies that wanted gaming hardware. So it's a good niche to get into because not a lot of people get the opportunity to build a game console or the resources on the other end to develop and manufacture it because it's, it's kind of a, one in a million kind of thing. It's not like a commodity piece of technology that everyone is making. There's only a few, So, so that's how I got into that of building the hardware. And then I've been doing that ever since, kind of focused on embedded systems, kind of edgy embedded systems. So gaming hardware, of course, now smartwatches, smart bands, smart rings. I did a smart ring and a smart band a couple projects ago. But I'm always looking for a good gaming piece of hardware to develop for somebody.
Yeah, I think that the idea that you had of sort of making these more primitive style game consoles just for educational purposes to teach the assembly language, to teach the actually touching the hardware. It's just such a brilliant idea that was like lost in the 80s and 90s, right? Those old consoles used to be that way.
Right.
Do you find it that people learn faster or really find that like a really great way, a great vector to learn about that sort of?
Yeah. So the problem today is no one human being can understand a modern computer or a modern game console. It's just too complex, right? Just the power supply there's a specialist for the power supply, a specialist for the CPU, for this, for the buses, et cetera, right? What was nice about the older systems, the Nintendos and Ataris and so forth, is that one human being could completely understand every single bit of it, right? And once you can understand it, then you can see what its constraints are, you can understand what its limits are, and that's a fun feeling because I know exactly what it can do. Now, how can I make it do amazing things? And, Activision used to do that. They would take the same hardware. People would see a game on the Atari 2600 made by Atari, like a tank or something, would look horrible. And then they would make something like Pitfall with, hundreds of screens and sound and all kinds of stuff. So as far as education goes, it's a great way for software engineers or hardware engineers to kind of learn, here's an entire system where I can really understand the whole thing, and there's no mystery to me. I know exactly what's going on, and that really facilitates learning and understanding, and then especially understanding things like optimization. So it's a really great way to learn hardware. And then, like anything, building a simplified model of something is always useful. But of course, the premise that I always have is that's great, but instead of building a checkbook, let's build a game system because that's a lot more fun to play with and learn with.
Oh, absolutely. That's always been our position here at the museum, right? If you ask a kid, do you want to learn to make a word processor?
Right.
Forget it. Do you want to learn to make a video game? The answer is always yes. And they already have 20 ideas for what they want to make.
Right. Yeah. And the interesting thing is, of course, now years later, people have been reading my books since the 90s, so 25 years. And, they contact me and they say, I didn't go into game development, but it helped me immensely. And now I'm the CEO of this, web company or this AI company or this whatever service kind of company, because it taught them how to think and how to program in a certain way to make no assumptions about what is possible. So the majority of people won't actually end up making games, but it's a great way to learn. And, all the time, once a month at least, I get a phone call from someone in Silicon Valley who's starting up a company, and they say, Andre, we're starting up a new company. We're doing, some kind of web aggregating, this, that, SEO, whatever. And I'm like, that's totally boring. Don't want to hear about it. And they go, but we need a really good programmer. Do you have any game programmers available? Because we just want to get them into this. So they want those kind of people, that kind of thinking, So it's a great way to learn, and it's a really, really marketable skill, even if you don't use it for making games.
Absolutely. So speaking of skills for today, like what are you doing today?
Right. So today, obviously with COVID, that kind of put a break into all the things I was working on. So right before COVID, I was working on a couple interesting projects, gaming related. So I was doing a gaming pen. So the world's first gaming pen with a screen in it, accelerometer, gyro, sensors, sound, microphone, wireless, and the alpha of that was complete. I was also working on another gaming watch, kind of an Arduino-based gaming watch for kids with, again, accelerometers and so forth, and that kind of stuff. That was, kind of put on hold. And then what happened was this was kind of all at the same time, about 2018, I believe, at the end of it, I was called up by Tommy Tallarico, who's the kind of composer and music god of gaming. He's done hundreds of games, the music for hundreds of games. And so he contacted me also through Dave Perry, the former founder of Shiny Entertainment and so forth. Dave's a good friend of mine. So they contacted me and they said, hey, we want to create a new Intellivision and for the 21st century. And so I said, well, that's awesome, but I get these calls all the time. We want to make a new Atari, we want to make a new Coleco, you name it, I get a phone call. And so, Tommy and I started having conversations, and he agreed that I told him that the reality is it's going to take about 2 years to develop this hardware, not 2 months or 6 months. It's going to take about 2 years. So he agreed to it. And so I agreed. to be the first engineering hire, kind of the lead engineer and chief scientist. And so I developed the game controllers for the new Intellivision Amico. And then I built up the engineering team to do the console. So did the hiring for the team to do the console. And so we did that project. We showed it off at E3 2 years ago. And then, of course, COVID hit, and then everything got kind of put on back burner, which just gave them time just to keep working on games. But the hardware was done. The hardware was done 2 years ago. And then they've been kind of putting off and pushing launch dates, now really due to this chip shortage. So that project, so that project, and so that'll come out early next year, and maybe some units will ship late this year, the Founders Editions and so forth, those kind of units. So
my big question before we move on from that is, what are your favorite Intellivision games?
I would probably say the Intellivision. I was an Atari person, but on the Intellivision, what I liked about it was, some of the games had really good sports games. And that was the thing that you couldn't find on the Atari at the time. So competitively, I had both systems, of course. And so on the Intellivision, I really liked the sports games. And I'm not a big sports gaming kind of person, but I do like to play, maybe baseball or football. So I like the baseball. And then, of course, the voice synthesis games, B-17 Bomber, for example, with the voice synthesizer. So as a game developer, when I looked at these things, when I was younger, I was just like, oh my God, this is amazing. I have to do this. How does this work? And so that's what I liked about the Intellivision, were those kind of games. So the sports games, and then anything with the voice synthesis, definitely was what was my favorite.
So I assume that this new hardware does not require a separate add-on to do the voice synthesis.
No. So what's publicly available about it is the console itself is a system on a chip, a Qualcomm processor, multi-core processor, and then it's not meant to be an Xbox killer or a PlayStation killer. So this is meant to play family-friendly games. But the difference about the Intellivision really is the controllers. That's where the secret sauce is. So the idea was, number one, I wanted to make the world's most powerful game controller, and these are, hands down. Once people see the hardware, if you open up an Xbox controller, PlayStation controller, anything else, these controllers are full-on computers. They're handheld computers. They're standalone handheld gaming consoles. Now, some people may not like the way that they look, but they look that way because Tommy and all of the Intellivision guys wanted it to look like and harken back to what the original Intellivision looked like. But under the hood is a tri-core, 32-bit RISC processor, gyro, accelerometer, high gain microphone, force feedback, a really cool disk system that I created, which there's patents about it, which allows you to kind of rotate your thumb around, and then it also can sense pressure, and it can do this very, very accurately. And so the whole idea was, can you build a cell phone? So there's like the technologies, we want an iPhone 3 for $10, $20 a unit. That was the challenge. So, I was up for it. And so anyway, so that's kind of what the system is about. And then the other thing is that, it comes with 2 controllers. It plays up to 8. So the whole idea is we want people to be able to play in the living room like we used to, and just hang out and play games with each other on the couch and just have fun. And then since all of the controllers have full RGB color touch screens, you can have a whole other kind of game experience because you can see what's going on in high resolution and do things on that screen that the other players can't play. So it just opens up a whole new kind of game mechanic for game developers to create cool media and cool content that they've never had the opportunity really to do, because there's no screens on any of the controllers. So of course the Dreamcast had a little black and white LCD screen, but no one really used that. So anyway, so that's the whole idea. It's the focus is really not on the console, but on the types of games you're going to be able to make, and the ability to have 8 controllers at one time.
That's really neat. What's the operating system?
The system is a Linux Android. It runs kind of a Linux Android, kind of a custom version. So that's what it's running under. And then we have, the graphics system that we developed and so forth for it, which, run the system. And then the controllers themselves run on kind of a modified HTML5, so that designers can create applications for them that do things on the PC, and then easily portable to these handhelds. But on the handhelds, on the controllers themselves, they can run completely independently. So you could put, for example, an Intellivision emulator on it. You can run Doom or Quake on these things, things like that. So what I'm excited about is to see what people do with the controllers separately. Once, of course, everybody's going to open these things up, hack them, figure them out, and and make all kinds of cool stuff for them.
Oh man, I mean, that sounds like a terrific way to play Werewolf, or to play quiz games, or all sorts of stuff where you have to have secret information passed between people who are sitting next to each other.
Right.
That's terrific. Well, Andre, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and I had fun talking about everything and talking about the good old days.
So, thank you very much, Andre LaMothe, for joining us today. Thank you for talking with Alex and having this great, insightful look into more of the earlier days of gaming and what it came to.
Have you seen pictures or like renderings of the Amico?
I've seen a couple of them. They look insane.
They look wild. Yeah.
Yeah, but I love it. I thought it was like super. It looks like what they wanted to try and do if they had an infinite budget in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
you know what I think of when I see the Amico? I think of I don't know, you guys have taken some long flight before or not, but they usually have those entertainment systems on the plane. It looks exactly like those stuff. And I really love playing those stuff because taking like 14 hours of flight, and I just have nothing to do during the flight, and that's my only way to have some entertainment, because I'm really not a fan of movie, and I would just keep playing that entertainment system. If that one is on the plane, then I probably don't have a problem spending my 14 hours.
Yeah, no, it's definitely kind of reminiscent of that. It's I love those. I thought that was a great installment in flights, and I'm bummed that I haven't seen them as much, but we'll see. What have y'all been playing recently? Pokemon Unite is a fun game. It's very digestible because matches are timed for 10 minutes. There's like a limit. So that's helpful in just managing playtime on a MOBA. It's also a very ease of entry MOBA. It makes it really fairly easy to get used to a few of the Pokemon and what they do. They just released Blastoise in the update, so I've been working on playing him, and he's a very functional character. Big tank, and can also do a lot of damage and push people away. He's very fun to play, and he looks really rad. All of the Pokemon look really cool and have awesome animations when they do their attacks. So I feel like it does it justice in that regard when you're feeling immersed in the Pokemon world. Other than that, still been playing Breath of the Wild. A lot more of the Jackbox games as well recently. Those have been fun with my coworkers and other things that I've been playing with them. They do such a great job of entertaining and making a fun party game that's digestible. Anybody else been playing anything?
Instead of MOBA, I try some of the tower defense game, the very traditional one, the one that you just place something.
Yes.
I really like it because playing a lot of games nowadays, especially those on the phones, you usually don't use the brain. You just press button, okay, now it's fine. But playing a tower defense game, I can really make some strategy myself, and it feels really good when it works.
Yeah. The tower defense games were a set of games that I played a lot when I was younger. There was just something so satisfying about playing those games. And then there was also I was a big fan of the Bloons tower defense series. If you're aware of that Flash game genre, there's not many tower defense games that I'm aware of currently. But what's the one that you've been playing?
It's actually on phone. It's called Arknights. I noticed it just because they have been having a lot of wonderful soundtracks, and I say, why not give it a shot? And I tried it, and I really love it. Even though it's a little bit gacha game, but overall, it's pretty fun. just to play it.
Oh, cool. That's good. Gotcha games are interesting. That's another conversation that we'll have to have
We probably save it
on a
for
different
later.
episode. But I think it's about time we wrap up for today. We'd like to thank you for listening to the Museum of Art and Digital Entertainment's official podcast. If you have any thoughts, questions, corrections, or general museum ideas, please shoot us an email at info@themade.org.
We'd like to send out a big thank you to everyone who donated recently and to our Patreon supporters who keep the Made afloat. Patreon donors get to listen to this podcast 1 week before it's released on major streaming services, and we'll continue that with future episodes every week. Till then, I'm Chun.
I'm Red.
I'm Anthony.
And I'm Miles. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.